Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Fuchs. I'm the Executive Director of the Maryland World Class Consortium. I'd like to welcome you to the 2015 Maryland Lean Government Conference and our panel discussion and forum. The purpose of today's session is to help share information. We have with us a distinguished panel of folks who've come from all across the United States to share their experiences with lean government and to help inform Maryland's move forward as we look forward to pursuing the same goals: efficient, effective, and dare I say, elegant government for everybody. So I'll begin just by introducing our panel members, and then we'll move on and I'll describe a few of the proceedings today. First, immediately to my right is Dr. Darlene Dumont. Darlene is the Public Service Program Director for the Lean Enterprise Institute. We've got a few slides that describes in our presentation here exactly what LEI does, but it's a very prominent nonprofit organization that works nationally and internationally to help advance the understanding of lean and help all types of organizations, public and private sector, to apply them. She's had over 27 years of diversified business experience, spanning lean transformation, executive coaching, curriculum design. She serves as an adjunct professor in supply chain management and organizational design. She's worked in a variety of industries, including healthcare, aerospace, nuclear, insurance, academia. Darlene informed me that she actually has 7 degrees. So she's a full-time student, which is exactly the type of thing that you want from a lean leader, a full-time, a lifelong learner. So she is also a Six Sigma black belt and a specialist in organizational design, Darlene Dumont. Next to her is Allison Fisher. Allison comes to us from the state of Connecticut. There's an ongoing lean transformation there called Lean Connecticut, Lean CT, and Allison Fisher manages Connecticut's statewide effort to promote a culture of continuous improvement through the Office of Policy and Management. In her functions, she guides and supports state agencies to use lean tools, and along with 14 steering committee members, one of whom we had a chance to meet yesterday, representing all the major areas of government, Allison arranges training, data collection and reporting, Kaizen, improvement event facilitation, and interagency support and collaboration. She also coordinates special projects for the Secretary of OPM. Allison joined the state of Connecticut in 2010 as a budget officer analyst, and earlier she's held positions with the city of Springfield, Massachusetts, and the state of New York. She holds a BA in public policy and a master's in public administration, both from the University of Albany. So we're very pleased to have Allison with us. Immediately to her right is Holly Jensen. Holly is the enterprise lean consultant at Results Washington. Washington state government has been on tear recently. They've had a remarkable lean transformation going on. I'm only sorry that it's all the way over on the other coast. We're very happy to have Holly here. She held my role just a couple of weeks ago, and they had a lean government conference that had, correct me now, over 2,000 people, is that correct? So I think they're a little bit serious when they say lean government over in the state of Washington. The state has long been a national leader in adapting proven private sector methods and tools to measure and improve state government performance. They've had some very deep involvement not only in all of the different branches of government, all of the different offices of government, but a very deep involvement with their industry sector as well. So we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. As part of Results Washington, the governor has created a new Lean Fellowship program. In this program, select leaders work in a development assignment side by side with agencies to improve performance and focus on key state government goals. Lean efforts help state agencies deliver better value by improving efficiency, effectiveness, and transparency. So as part of her role with the state of Washington, Holly is developing and implementing a Lean Fellowship and Leadership program, while also consulting on the governor's priority goal areas. She joined state government in the spring of 2013 as an enterprise lean consultant after 17 years with Starbucks, where she picked up a lot of her lean skills and techniques. She worked her way through the ranks of that organization, and the state of Washington is very lucky to have her. Most recently, she was a lean practice strategy manager with a focus on implementing the store system of work and leadership coaching in Starbucks, and we're very happy to have you here. Thank you. Next to her, Henry Sobanay. Henry Sobanay. Henry is a Denver native, and he was educated at Regis High School, University of Colorado Boulder, University of Colorado at Denver. He works with the Governor's Office of State Planning and Budgeting, has been there since 1999. He's held a number of positions there. 2006, I understand, you left that position and went into private industry. He was president of Colorado Strategies, LLC, a firm that specialized in economics, public affairs, and strategic management. And then in 2011, Governor Hickenlooper selected Henry to return as director of the Office of State Planning and Budgeting. So he demonstrated, I think, some very capable skills and was asked to come back. He serves on a number of boards and commissions, including the Commission on Information Management, the Statewide Internet Portal Authority, Colorado Transportation Commission, and the 2nd Judicial District Nominating Commission. Henry Sobanay, thank you for being here. And finally, at the end of the table, last but not least, from just down the road, Amy Costanzo from the City of Baltimore. Amy is a senior program assessment analyst with the City of Baltimore. Prior to coming to Baltimore, she worked as a contract attorney for the Department of Justice and for a small law firm not far away over in Rockville. Ms. Costanzo oversees the budget of 2 city agencies and manages several special projects, including the annual Citizen Survey, the city's Innovation Fund, and Lean Government Transformation Initiatives. She holds both a law degree and a master's degree from the University of Baltimore and is currently writing her thesis for her Master's of Public Policy from Georgetown University. And on top of all that, she's a really good DJ. And so we're very happy to have her here as well. So please welcome our panel with a round of applause, please. What we're going to do today is we've got some time to spend first orienting everybody to what this term lean means. What does lean mean? How does it apply to government? And so I wanted to cover a few of those things with you. First, a little bit of background on us as an organization, very briefly. And then we're going to jump into a bit of a background, orientation on lean, help to define that for those who haven't heard that term before. And then Darlene is going to present to you the Lean Enterprise Institute's Lean Transformation Model. This is something that has been kind of a crystallizing platform for folks that helps to clarify exactly what lean transformation means in any type of an organization, public or private. And so she'll discuss a few features of that. From there, we'll go into a panel discussion, so you all have cards with you to ask your questions of this group, and then we'll open it up at the end for a general question and answer. During this session at any time, if you have any questions, please do go ahead and write those down on the card. Write it so that we can read it, please. I've gotten some from very sketchy handwriting in sessions similar to this. And then Marina is right here at the back corner of the group. Go ahead and signal her, and she'll come around and collect up those cards for you. Okay. So let's discuss a little bit about what lean is. First we'll a bit of a commercial announcement, and let me describe a little bit about the Maryland World Class Consortia. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Next year is going to be our 20th year in existence. And I told some folks before, I'm going to continue to say this until somebody jumps up and proves me wrong, but we are the longest lived lean consortium in the country. There are many now, dozens, all across the United States, organizations of public and private sector organizations who group together in order to learn together, to share best practices, to discuss obstacles that they're encountering together, and to talk about strategies and help each other move through this lean transformation, because it can be difficult and you don't need to learn on your own. So we help facilitate that. We've been established to help create more competitive organizations, both public and private, all across the state. So we help in the private sector to grow both the top and bottom line, we say, not only to improve bottom line results to help organizations become more efficient, but also to use lean as a strategy for growth, to deliver more and better value to customers, and to help grow the business, help grow employment. And so we're here not only to preserve jobs and grow jobs, but to help create more competitive organizations. And when we talk about the public sector, that competitiveness is also an important term for you. So we want more competitive public sector organizations as well, meaning you're able to deliver on the things that citizens want and businesses want of your government entities and of nonprofit organizations. So competitive really doesn't just restrict itself to a useful definition within the private sector. So in more broad terms, we're really here to help all types of organizations, and in so doing, help all the elements of this societal ecosystem that we have. We want a better society through lean. The primary things that we do go into diagnostics tools. What does world-class mean to you? How good are you today at doing some of the things that you do? How good could you be if you applied some of these proven techniques? We provide educational services. We have a lean facilitator program, many different workshops that help build the important skills necessary to complete an effective lean transformation. The networking is important, learning from each other, peer groups, opportunities to get together on a routine basis and share information, and implementation support, consultants who we reach to in order to help build those capabilities inside your organization. So the bottom line is we're all about people, performance, and process. We want to help you build the capabilities in your people, to focus on the processes that deliver value to businesses and to citizens, and to help improve performance of any organization, government, nonprofit, or private sector. So that's a little bit about what we do. Now, we can go on and talk a little bit about lean and where this comes from. And in order to kind of define what lean is, we're going to go way back to the development of a precursor to lean, which was the Toyota production system inside that very same company. And so this occurs post-World War II. And Toyota at this point, prior to this, had been a company that didn't make cars. They did other things, but they were a very innovative company. And the founder of this company had to really take his innovation, solve problems, and that's the type of attitude that he fostered inside his company. We don't have the resources to buy our way out of situations. We have to innovate our way out. So use what you have available, and use the common sense and problem solving that every human being has, and identify the obstacles, define the problem, solve the problem, and use this as a series, approach this as a series of experiments. You see a problem, how can you solve the problem using the tools and resources that you have? Very prominent in the development of the early Toyota production system is the thinking of Henry Ford. When Toyota started making cars, they were looking to get better at doing so. And so they turned to the ideas of Henry Ford over here in the US. And many of the ideas, many of the basic concepts at the core of what lean is all about, and the Toyota production system really go back to the ideas of Henry Ford. So that's an important strand of DNA that creates the early Toyota production system. In addition to that, there are several elements of the quality movement. So some of you may be familiar with folks like W. Edwards Deming, Joseph Duran, and others. These are leaders in the quality movement who basically started looking at the way that people make stuff and identifying the fact that if we have processes that are well designed, that are robust, and if we feed them the right inputs, these well-designed processes that are insensitive to variation now will deliver the right outputs again and again. And so some of these leaders of the quality movement actually took this movement off of the shop floor and brought it up into business in general. to say to business leaders at the time, you know, if you design a business process that is robust, it's insensitive to variation, and if you feed it the right inputs, you'll get the right outputs time and again. Doesn't that make sense? And so that's an important element of that Toyota production system as well. And finally, there was this element of training within industry, which was actually how we became in World War II the arsenal of democracy. How do we take people from all walks of life, bring them into a factory that they've never seen before, and get them competent very quickly in not only doing the work, but improving the work. And so you blend all those things together, and these strands form the DNA of the Toyota production system. So post-World War II, all of these components came together into a operating system that was not it didn't just spring into being. It was actually something where the folks at Toyota were very pragmatic. They saw some good management practices. They put them together into something that worked for them. Other things they tried didn't work so well, and they rejected those. But these combination of elements actually created an operating system that not only brought them to the point where they were playing catch-up with, say, Detroit automakers, but in just a couple of decades brought them to the point where they were not only at parity with Detroit, but was actually beating the performance of Detroit. And so there's something special here in the Toyota production system, and it goes all the way back to, as we indicated, World War II and beyond. Now we fast forward a bit, and if you think about, let's say, the 70s, think about the types of cars that we were driving around here in the US during the 70s, right? Cars like this, muscle cars, or the big land yachts like the Cadillacs, right? And that is the type of industry that we created here on this side of the pond. Notice, however, that when we get into the 70s, remember what happened in the economy during that time, the oil crisis. And all of a sudden, instead of gravitating towards these big land yachts and muscle cars with names like Cougar and Barracuda and Mustang, right? People wanted cars that were fuel efficient. And what were we building here in the United States that met that market demand? Cars like Pintos, right? Gremlins, Pacers. These were not top-of-the-line cars. And out of Detroit, and I grew up in Detroit, so I think I'm allowed to say that. So but these were cars that really did not meet customers' expectations of value. And honestly, they were all made at a loss. All of the Detroit 3 at the time were making their money off of the big cars and subsidizing this small market for these little cars. Meanwhile, on the other side of the pond, however, the folks at Toyota were actually doing very nicely, making small cars at a profit. And there was something about the system that they had developed that allowed them to do so. And part of the secret there was the Toyota production system. And so they tried to enter the American market with a car that looked like this. Now get this, this was called the Toyopet, the Toyopet. So at the same time that we here in the US were driving around in the Cougars, right, here comes the Toyopet. So it didn't do well. And there were a few reasons why, but primarily among them was the fact that the Japanese didn't understand some things about the American market. These Americans are a little bit different. The things that resonate with us in Japan don't resonate with the folks in America so well. So Detroit looked over to Toyota and saw some things that would be interesting, a management technique that might be helpful. Toyota saw an opportunity to get a cultural Sherpa that would help them decipher the American market space. And so in the early 80s, there was a joint venture between these two companies, GM and Toyota. And I mention this because this is the first example that we find of how this Toyota production system is actually portable to other organizations. It's not just something that is purely something that Toyota can do alone. And so this company was formed, the New United Motors Manufacturing Incorporated, NUMMI. And it was an experiment between these two organizations. What they did blew the doors off anything that GM had done prior. This is a factory that went from worst to the worst, and in just about a year, they went to the best of the best in every dimension that matters, whether it's labor cost per vehicle, initial customer quality rating, safety, you name it. Across the board, they blew every other GM facility out of the water. And so they demonstrated that these techniques not only get results, but anybody can do them. And so that's an important landmark in the development of what we now know as Lean today. If we go on just a few years, right about that time, there's an author in Japan. He was an engineer with Toyota. He's one of the first people who actually took a look backwards and codified the Toyota production system as we know it today. And then others wrote about this. There was this book, The Machine That Changed the World, which described this technique in greater depth. And finally, in 1996, we find this book, Lean Thinking, where the term lean actually derives and where it's popularized for the first time. And so this is what we now know of as Lean today. It's a generic version of the Toyota production system and the Toyota way. It's something that anybody can learn, anybody can apply. And so the examples that are provided in this book have a whole host of examples that not only go back to Detroit and the automobile origins, but it goes into other industries as well and demonstrates that it's not just for cars. Wherever you have a process that delivers value, you have an opportunity to apply the Toyota production system. And in this book, there's a definition. I've paraphrased here and put this all into one sentence. But in this one sentence here, you find 5 key terms: value, value stream, flow, pull, perfection. This is one way to define what Lean is all about. And so if you imagine what my life is like as director of an organization with 30 or 40 member organizations, some of them are manufacturers. Others are in the public sector. So the Maryland Science Center is one of our members. Howard County Public School System is one of our members. Garrett County Office of Economic Development, one of our members. And so as I go around to each one of these different organizations, they're all doing very different things, as you can imagine. And they're all, however, on a lean journey. They're using these techniques. And so as an outside observer, as a coach who's coming in to advise and support these organizations, how is it that I can do what I do? And the answer is by going back to fundamental principles like this. This definition is universal. There's nothing here that's manufacturing specific or particular to automobile manufacturing. This applies to every process anywhere. We want to begin by defining the customer of our process, the quote-unquote customer. And for many of you, it's business, it's citizens. We need to define in lean terms exactly what they're looking for. How do they define value? These customers of ours, they define value. We're in the job now of delivering that value, and we need to do that as best we can. The next element of this helps us do that. We need to define the value stream, the series of process steps that we go through from initial service request or a need or some type of a form that somebody fills out that said, I need this type of service, and we follow that through. We kind of staple ourselves to that piece of paper or that request, and we follow that all the way through the different departments, the different offices and functions. That defines the value stream. And on that value stream, we're looking for that third term. We're looking for flow. We want to ideally see things move from value-added operation to value-added operation without stoppages, without scrap, something being lost from the value stream, without backflow, going back to an earlier stage to have something done that was missed or incorrect or inadequate in some way. And we want to do this all at the pull of these customers so that when they require some service, we're able to respond in a very flexible, very adaptive way to the various things that they need. And so we want to do all those things in a never-ending cycle. There's this continuous pursuit of perfection, which is that last term. So all of these elements together, value, value stream, flow, pull, perfection, become the 5 key principles of lean that are universally true no matter what type of an organization you're running, public or private. And so that's how I'm able to do some of the things that I do. I go in and I look at the gap that I can see between where an organization ideally should be versus where they are today in relation to each one of these 5 key principles. And that offers the opportunity for advice and guidance. How can we get better at doing this lean stuff here in, let's say, this government office? So that's a little bit about that. Now, I'll point out that it's about the 90s, really, that we begin to see this diversification of lean. Lean gets its start on a factory floor. And then we see that the root causes of some of these problems that manifest themselves on a factory floor actually have roots that go to some other quarter of the organization. And so we, in order to address lean and how we're going to apply that in some of these other functions, we see adaptations, slight variations on a theme in terms of the tools and techniques for how we close the gap in performance in some of those other areas. So this is where we come up with lean as it applies to product development. Lean IT, lean supply chain, lean accounting, lean sales and marketing. And even just recently, there's been a book written on how lean applies to a startup, a process that doesn't even exist yet. And so it really does demonstrate that lean is not just something that's good for a manufacturing operation, even an existing operation. Lean applies to all the functions of a typical organization. And so we find this diversity of experience that begins to present itself in about the 80s or 90s. It's about that same time that we find another experiment begin to take root, and outside of automotive, we find an explosion of interest in fields like aerospace and defense. And so in the 90s, we find the establishment of the Lean Aerospace Initiative, later the Lean Advancement Initiative, a project out of MIT that involved aerospace and defense primes, applying these techniques to an automotive assembly line, and now applying them to projects where, let's say, we're making 100 of something only, or 1 of something. How do we do that in a multi-project environment? How do we do that in an area where it's mostly thought work and engineering, and it's not people turning a wrench on a shop floor? And again, it underscores the fact that this lean stuff applies everywhere. So we begin to see this take root in a different industry from where it's originally started in automotive. We go further on, and just in the last decade or so, we see an explosion of lean application in healthcare. And don't we all know that it could really use it? So there's a lot of improvement that needs to go on. And some of the things that we're hearing about in the headlines today are initiatives that are working top down. Yes, it is important to address the questions of who pays for what and who's on insurance and who's not. But in addition to that, we're seeing examples of how lean is being applied from the bottom up. Individual facilities, individual departments, EDs in emergency departments, entire healthcare systems are demonstrating how they can change their operating system, the very culture by which people interact together, the processes that they have, the tools that they work with. And so lean healthcare is actually a very vibrant and active area now where lean is again taking hold in this industry. And again, it underscores once again, lean applies to processes, period. And then most recently, we see lean applied to government. And so the folks that we have here on this panel very ably can discuss how lean applies to, let's say, state and city and even county government. So just a little bit more about this government piece. The various branches of the armed forces, each one of them has a very active Lean or Lean Six Sigma program that's been going on for decades, and they've gotten some dramatic results. So you can go to the websites of any of the armed forces and find a tab on what they're doing with Lean or Lean Six Sigma, and your finger will get tired scrolling through the number of improvement activities and initiatives and the tens and hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars that they save on a routine basis. And so I leave that for your investigation. But lean in government has a very solid foundation in this particular corner of the government. There are states, and we've got some represented here. I think the earliest example of this is the state of Iowa, whose lean transformation has been going on now for 12 years. And so they have lean written into legislation. They have lean projects that are active in every department of government. And again, refer you to their website, and you can see some of those examples that are very complete and self-contained, describing the project, the problem that they were focusing on, the activities that they did, and the substantial financial and non-financial returns that they got. This applies at other jurisdictional levels as well. This guy, Graham Richard, is the former mayor of Fort Wayne, and he will tell you that he won multiple terms in office through lean. He never explained it to citizens. He didn't try to describe in detail what the inner workings were of how the government was achieving some of these remarkable goals. But in his book, Performance is the Best Politics, it explains how he applied lean to every department of his city government. I think it's a very, very good case study. In addition to that, the Environmental Protection Agency has put out a whole lean government toolkit, and it's a very good meta-study, very good compendium of different tools and resources. And again, that's available for free on their website. I encourage you to go there and take a look, pull that down, and it has a very good lean primer, as well as a whole host of resources that they point to. Lean government, I will just say in sum, regardless of what level you're talking about, municipal, county, state, federal, there are very rich examples all across the U.S. This is a series of experiments now that has been going on for over a decade, and the results speak for themselves. Lean government gets results. Lean government gets results. Now, right now, our own state of Maryland is in its early stages. So we have, I think, a good deal of reflection and a huge opportunity to apply some of these techniques. And we're very fortunate that we've had folks that have come into Maryland to help share their experiences and knowledge with us. And we're very happy to have this group here who's going to do the same for us today. So that's a little bit about lean government. I'm sorry, about the history of lean. Just to sum up a little bit, I think Darlene's going to do the same, just to try and describe a little bit of what lean is. I've tried to put together an elevator speech of just a few key terms that I think, if I'm lucky, they'll crystallize in the mind of a chief executive somewhere and help define what lean is all about. So feel free to use this maybe as you go back to some of your offices and try to help people understand what it is that you've collected and what this all means exactly. So these elements start like this. First of all, this is a total effort. We're talking about changing culture. So culture is like the air that we breathe. Everybody contributes to it. Nobody owns it. But it's one of the things that you need to improve and maintain the quality of all the time. So this involves everybody from frontline employees up to the highest levels of your department or agency. Every function is included as well. Nobody's exempt. Waste in an organization doesn't know any departmental boundaries. It's everywhere. We're not laying blame. We're just saying that in an organization of real human beings, waste is given. And we've got all kinds of opportunities to use systematic problem solving in order to get rid of those collectively. We said it's about changing culture. Culture is what you habitually do. And so if we're serious about creating a culture of continuous improvement, then we've got to change the habits, our own and everybody that works in our organization, on a routine basis. How do we change the way that people think about their work in a small work group? How do we change the way that a person sitting, let's say, alone in their cubicle doing a process thinks about their work? How do we change that? And so this is something where we need to address the routine habits that people have. Instead of the habit of coming into work and doing the work, we want to adjust that, and we want to make that habit sound like I'm here to do the work and improve the work. Right? Those two things now need to go together. The day isn't complete unless we've done some small improvement to make tomorrow's work just a little bit better than today's was. That applies on an individual and a group basis. So that's an important piece of this as well. It's about these cycles of improvement, and the cycle is not a very complicated thing. It's the old Deming cycle, plan, do, check, act. And so we've heard these very commonly, and it's common knowledge, but it's not really common practice. How often when you encounter an obstacle, let's say in your workday, do you not just look to get around the obstacle, to kind of push it aside, to work around it, to get the work done, but to stop and pause for a moment and think, how do I eliminate this obstacle presenting itself to me again tomorrow? How do I not just get around this obstacle? How do I make this obstacle go away permanently? And how do I do that in a systematic way? So it's these cycles of improvement, and while we improve, we actually learn some things about the nature of the process and how we can best improve our work. And it is about providing our customers, those citizens, those businesses, with greater value, and do that using fewer resources. So it is about those things. In sum, I'd say that it's this. This is kind of a mantra that we have in the consortia. It's about everybody, every day, systematically solving problems. So for those of you taking notes, I'd definitely write that one down. What Lean is, it's about everybody, every day, systematically solving problems. When somebody asks you what this is all about, or what exactly is the culture that Lean aims to create, it's about everybody, every day, systematically solving problems. So let me just sum up this section, and then I'm going to turn things over to Darlene. Some keys, I think, from our perspective as a consortia to understanding Lean are these. First of all, this is not some new initiative. This is not some program. So when you go back to the office, I don't want you to, please, describe for people, hey, this is some new program that we need to embark upon, and people are going to roll their eyes and go, jeepers, another thing that we have to do. This is a little bit different. This is not another thing to do. This is a way to do everything that you do. So it's not a program, it's a means. It's a means to actually change the way that you do all the different things that I know you're doing right now. So that's an important point, I think. As I said before, we made the point, Lean applies to all processes. No matter what it is that you do in government, you might be thinking about a specific example and wondering if it applies. Go ahead and ask the question, but I can tell you what the answer is going to be. Lean applies to all processes. No matter what the field of human endeavor is, there's an opportunity to use Lean. And I think if I'm successful, I'm going to make you as twisted mentally as I am and the rest of this panel. You're going to walk around seeing waste everywhere. I see waste everywhere. So as I'm walking around in the morning and I'm feeding my two daughters, I'm thinking about a better location for the cereal bowls. I'm thinking about maybe instead of putting all the silverware in one location over on that corner of the kitchen, maybe I take a few spoons and I put them over here on the island so I decrease my walk distance. Sick in the head. All right? Hopefully I'll turn you sick as well. But everything that you do, when you think not just about doing the work, but improving the work, it becomes contagious. You see Lean opportunities everywhere. They really do apply to all processes. There's a very important point to this. You know, Lean, it's a great term, but it does have some baggage that goes along with it. So initially when you say, hey, we're going to become a leaner organization, you know what that implies to some folks. So you got to get out in front of that and make sure that everybody that you share this with understands, as it says here, you know, lean and mean, those two words, they rhyme, but there's no other association that they have in the Lean lexicon. This is all about people and helping people solve problems and giving them the tools so that they're not just a slave to a broken process, you're actually giving them the keys to improve the process of which they are a part. It's all about respect for people, and we're going to discuss that as we get into the panel discussion section. But it's really not about trimming fat. It's not about reducing headcount. It's about providing better service. It's about being faster in response. It's about reducing lead time. It's about making the process more hassle-free for the people who do the work, more rewarding. And by doing so, that's what creates the better, faster, cheaper, and provides all the things that all of these leaders and citizens want as a result. We want better performance out of government. Well, your government is filled with real human beings doing the work. And so if we make the work more rewarding, more intrinsically rewarding, if we respect the people who do the work and make it simpler and easier and faster and more hassle-free for them, then the other things happen as a result, as a byproduct. So Lean is really about people, and that's a very important point to take home, I think. It's about changing culture. We want to change our work habits. And again, kind of change the operating system instead of just focusing on doing the work, doing and improving the work. And again, to amplify on this people piece, it's about not some top-down program where somebody like a senior executive or an outside consultant comes in and tells people how to do their job. We have to respect the accumulated experience that people have doing the job. They understand what works and what doesn't. They understand how this process, the way that it needs to be done, actually deviates from the process that's written, because that was written so long ago by somebody who had a dream of what this process was actually going to look like. Here's how we actually do the work. Here's how we actually deliver value for citizens. And then I think most importantly, and we'll get into this a little bit more, lean transformation really does require lean leadership. And so that's something that I'm sure we're going to cover in the panel session today. Okay? So I'm sure that also raises some questions in your mind. This will be a good time, if you do have some, to maybe jot those down on a card. And if you burn through that card, Marina's got plenty more. Let me turn things to the discussion specifically of government. And I just want to do this very briefly and just say that there have been a lot of responses that I hear, that we all hear very typically, of government and how it's different and how this lean stuff is very interesting, but I'm not quite sure that it would work in this context. So everything that you see up here is something that you hear in one form or another at one time or another when it comes to government. And the thing is that I think each one of these can be refuted. Each one of these can be addressed. It's either not an issue in the current state, or it's something that is really very, very common. You find this in all organizations. As a matter of fact, when we look at some of these potential concerns that people may have, I think for everybody here that has industry experience, they would agree that these types of things you find in large organizations of all types, in the private sector as well. And true, many of them are obstacles, but they're not insurmountable obstacles. They're the type of thing that you need to be mindful of, cognizant of, in your current state as you seek to create and fashion a lean transformation. But they're not impossible. They're roadblocks, to be sure, but they can be addressed. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. So I think the bottom line is that this is something that we should all have an expectation of. There are discussions, I think, about left and right and the politics of this. This really is not a political discussion. I don't think that when we talk about efficient and effective and elegant government, that has any type of a party affiliation. True, I think that many people have discussions about the proper size and role of government. You know, those discussions have gone on since the beginning of our republic. They're hundreds of years old, and they aren't going to go away with this. They're going to continue to persist, and they should. It's a good discussion to have. This is not a political football. Efficient and effective and elegant government is something that every citizen should expect, regardless of party orientation. So this is not a red or a blue issue, it's a purple issue. And I think that kind of maybe adds a little bit of a flavor to this from a government context as well. Let me turn things over to Darlene. I think that covers some basics of what lean is about from our perspective. Darlene, I think, will shed a little bit more light on this and also go into more detail about what lean transformation looks like. What is required, actually, in order to effect a good lean transformation. Folks, help me welcome Darlene Dumont up to the podium, please. Sure, that's fine. Yeah.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? So I'm just curious, how many people in the audience have some form of a lean background? A handful. You're all over here. What's up with that? You found each other miraculously. And then how many people are just learning about lean for the first time? Quite a few. Okay, great. So this helps me to identify, where to go into more depth. So what I'm going to talk about is not only about our organization, because we are a learning organization, we are a research organization, so I want to share with you some of our products and services. So if you want to learn more, you have some avenues to go to get some free information. And so with that, so you've heard a lot yesterday and also today already about Dr. Jim Womack. And so Dr. Jim Womack was an MIT professor way back when, at the time that he was funded to go over and do some additional research as to why Toyota, why some of these Japanese automotive companies were doing so much better. The Machine That Changed the World is one of the kind of the famous books that went along with that, as you heard, along with Lean Thinking. He was also the founder and prior CEO of the Lean Enterprise Institute. So for those of you that are just becoming into this new world, congratulations. And you will someday start to hear a lot more about Lean Enterprise Institute. So anyone who has any kind of a lean background, this is kind of the roots of where it all happened. And so somewhere at some point in time, your paths will bring you back here. And so Dr. Jim Womack began the Lean Enterprise Institute as a nonprofit research and educational organization. Now we have John Shook as our CEO, and you heard Jeff speak earlier about NUMMI, which was that first automotive company here in the US, which combined Toyota and GM. And John Shook was at Toyota, and he was brought over to really help lead that transformation at NUMMI, and has done and did an amazing job. And so now he is our leader and CEO, and doing some amazing things. So even though we're a nonprofit educational and learning organization in Cambridge, Massachusetts, we do and are considered kind of a parent, not by legal state, but just in terms of kind of oversight of several other organizations throughout the world. So there are 17 other countries, and it fluctuates by one or two. But there are several other countries that are also spreading lean thinking and practice within their own countries. Recently, I learned that Singapore is actually has a movement where they are going to change their entire government to be lean thinking and practitioners. So very, very interesting. And John Shook is there with them hand in hand. So that'll be interesting to hear how that all starts to transpire. We have about almost a 500,000 people or followers around the world that will access our website and or want to be part of this lean community where they can share and share information with each other. And even though it seems like a lot, there's actually only about 17 full-time employees that work at LEI. However, we have a huge outreach and network, and that includes about 40 faculty members that commonly do our workshops. So in terms of how we share this information and how we learn, we have several products and services. So as you would imagine, learning materials, publications, and also workshops is one of our larger value streams. We have public workshops, and I know I've seen a few of you several times at those public workshops. We have on-site, so we'll actually come on-site to an organization and do workshops depending on the need. And then we also have online, so for those people that have not enough time or budget, those are always good options. We do co-learning partnerships, and what that means is for select organizations where we need and want to learn from, we will partner with them. So we'll go in, we'll get a better understanding of what is their world that they're living in, and if they're truly sincere about trying to do a transformation within an organization to get it to be more lean thinking, we will work with them to do so. And so we'll usually start off with a model cell, go inch wide, mile deep, to really understand the culture that exists in there, and we'll test and trial a lot of different things to see how does the organization respond to these items, and so that we can build these management systems and this new way of thinking and then spread that across the organization. Our co-learning partners help us to do that. We have about anywhere from 10 to 20 on any given point in time, and we work with them in order to understand what's so unique about their particular business, and then again through publications and education share those learnings with the world. Lean product and process development is a relatively new network, I would say, community of practice. So for any organizations that are just starting up, as a new business, or perhaps you have a new product line, or perhaps there's a new or a process that's really, really bad that you just want to start from scratch and reinvigorate. This practice, or this community of practice, would be something you might be interested in. So if you went to our lean.org website, you can get involved with that. It doesn't cost anything, and there's a lot of sharing of information right now that's happening in that community. Our strategic networks, Jeff mentioned earlier that this lean practice doesn't just stop at manufacturing, it's in every single industry. So we had a movement that started with Healthcare Value Network about 7 years ago or so, and now Dr. John Toussaint, you might have heard his name in healthcare if you're in healthcare at any point. But he's doing an amazing job of really just trying to carry forward this to a lot of different healthcare organizations, and they're really starting to make some big some big improvements. The Public Service Value Network is near and dear to my heart. I'm retired military, and so in a sense of giving back, I think for, at least for the handful of people that are over here, and for Jeff and for those up here, once you get this in your blood, you feel a sense of community. You want to give this knowledge back in some way, shape, or form in order to help make a difference and to make the world a better place. And so, working as a program director for the Public Service Value Network, I'm excited because we are getting a lot of pull from government and nonprofit organizations, and so really our role is to help network everybody to really start that cross-pollinating and sharing of information to learn from each other. The Lean Global Network is basically that network I referred to that has a lot of different countries involved with. And then for those in academia, there's also a network referred to as LEAN, which can sometimes be confusing, but that is our academia one. We do 2 summits every year, one in healthcare and then our regular Lean Transformation Summit. But then in addition to that, several members within LEI come to different conferences, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you, Jeff, and congratulations, by the way, for 20 years next year. That's a big deal. And I think that is the oldest one, so until somebody says something different. And so we will go and travel over the world to help share this knowledge, and then of course lean.org. So sometimes the word lean can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. It's been around for 20 plus years from the pure sense of Jim Womack helping to create that term. And we now have Lean Six Sigma, we have just general lean. Different consulting groups can go into an organization and say we're going to make the organization lean, and their approach may or may not be consistent with some of the philosophies you heard Jeff talking about earlier. Some of it is tool-based. So yes, we are philosophical in our concepts of what we want to do from a people standpoint, from a process standpoint, in order to create flow. There are some very specific tools and techniques that we can use and learn in order to help with that. However, it's not just about using tools. It's a corporate improvement sometimes. So sometimes somebody is sitting next to another person on an airplane and might come back and say, I heard that lean does all this great stuff. We're going to become lean, and I want to see all these great financial results within the next couple of years. And they really don't understand anything about the concept of it. They know it can do great things, which it can, but they just want to see the results immediately. Training and certifications. Training and certifications and belts, those are all great things. We all need training, we all need to understand the principles of everything, but to be able to apply it in a consistent manner, again, this is a step in the right direction, but doesn't necessarily give you that whole transformation of how you get everybody every day thinking differently. It definitely is not a headcount reduction. Some financial organizations might be very attracted to lean because, wow, you can go in and you can reduce lead time, you can reduce our costs of making something or of the processes, and then we're going to be able to eliminate all these full-time employees. That's not what this is about. And something that only applies to manufacturing. Yes, that's where the roots started from, but it's been tried and tried again and with success in every industry. So what's different about lean? Again, it's about adding value for the customer. So our mindset every day is, what is that mission? What are we trying to do? What is my role here at X agency or X department? And how does it align with what is important to our customers? And if I'm sitting in a meeting and there's nothing that's actionable from that meeting, I have to wonder, where is the value add for the customer? And as Jeff was saying, once you're learning this, you see it everywhere, and so the waste is just everywhere. It's all the rights. It's having the right product at the right price at the right time for the right customer. So with Lean, we learn how to do that. We view people as our most valuable asset. Again, yes, we'll go into an area, and if something maybe took, let's say, 8 weeks to process a particular permit or whatever it might be within your agency to get done, we can reduce that probably by at least half, if not more. And it continues to go down that route. So then people immediately ask, well, what's going to happen to my job? Well, our philosophy is that we redeploy. We take that knowledge that exists within that organization, and we want to redeploy that knowledge because that's a great asset. And then if you really want to think societal and what Toyota will do, they'll actually take their employees and deploy them out into the community. They'll deploy them out to any organization that is crying and saying, come help us. They have a societal value of helping others. It's the process, not the people. So it's very common and almost human-like to immediately say, if somebody said, how did that happen? Oh, so-and-so did it. Well, we really try to stay away from the blame. And yes, it could be that maybe so-and-so was the person that was working at the time that it went awry. But what we really want to be asking is, what is broken in our process that allowed that error to occur? And so this is sometimes where Six Sigma, we won't get into a huge depth on that, but where Six Sigma can really come into play, because if it's a really important piece of the process, then Six Sigma statistical analysis can be used to really help drive out that variation to make it perfect, so that no matter who does it, at any point in time, it's always going to be consistent. So that's another key point. And then the other thing that's really different with Lean and our approach is when we think about setting a price for a particular product or service, it's not about taking our current costs and then tacking on our margin of return that we want. It's about starting with our cost and figuring out how much waste do we need to take out of our processes in order to get that profit. So it's not raising the price, it's actually keeping it the same or reducing it. So lean thinking in practice, Jeff covered a lot of these already, but basically, again, it's value. We're looking at what's value added. What do they truly care about? What do they want to pay for? So we identified what lean is. We talked a little bit about how it can be applied in all these different industries. And now you might be wondering, okay, so a lean transformation, what does that mean? So if we're going to be going into an organization and we're going to try to get everybody to think differently, there's a holistic way of thinking about that. And John Shook, our CEO, will talk about 5 different dimensions of what needs to be thought about in order to start to strategically put things in place to help transform an organization to be thinking differently. So I'm going to share this video with you. It's just a quick video, and then I'll talk a little bit more detail afterwards.
Here at the Lean Enterprise Institute, we think a lot about change. We think a lot about enterprise transformation. Every day, all day, each of us aspires to create desired change. That's what work is all about. Enterprise transformation, then, is change on the enterprise level. We've learned a lot over the years, and we have learned that effective enterprise transformation requires change, innovative improvement on 5 dimensions. That is a bold assertion, not 4, not 6, but 5 dimensions. And lean thinking has a point of view about each of those 5 dimensions. We're not going to go deeply into what those points of view are right now. What we will do is explore the essential matter of how to think about enterprise change through the illustration of a house. The metaphor of a house has been around lean thinking for a long time, so we'll use that for convenience. Let's start with the roof to explore it. Any good house has to have a roof to protect us from the rain, sleet, and maybe excessive sunshine, if there could be such a thing. At the top of this house, we're going to have our objectives, our goals, our aspirations. In other words, we're going to be asking a question, which is, what is our value-driven purpose? Why are we here as a company, as an enterprise? It may be that we think we're here just to generate money. That would take us down a certain path, in which case I may care less about value and may care just about profit. Lean thinking drives us to think about what value are we creating for customers, for society, for employees. What is our value-driven purpose? Since it starts with a question like that, that means our approach to effective transformation is going to be situational. It's a situational approach determined by first asking the question, what is our value-driven purpose? And more specifically, each individual in your organization needs to be able to ask and answer, what problem am I here to solve? What problems are we each trying to solve? The next question to ask is, what is the work to be done? What is the work? Any house has to have walls, or we could say pillars, to hold up the roof. This first pillar represents the work to be done. We can call it process. What is the process by which we're going to accomplish our purpose? If our purpose is to create videos, then we have to know how to get a video camera, then set it up so that we have the proper lights so we can actually get the work done. Then, as we gain experience, we'll doubtless find that there are problems in the work, that the work needs to be improved. So we need some means by which we go about process improvement, improving the work to be done. Always starting with the work. What is the work to be done? So now that I've identified the work that's going to solve the problem, to deliver the value that we're here to provide, that's the first pillar to hold up the roof. The roof is not going to be held up with only one pillar. We have to have another. And we're going to call this one capability. This pillar is understood by asking the question, what capabilities do we need to do the work, to solve the problem, to fulfill our purpose? Capability building then comprises the other pillar, the second pillar. With these two pillars, now I have something holding up my roof, so it starts to look like a house. But any house is only a house until it's a home. It becomes a home by the behavior of the people living in it. The person is inside, not outside, so protected, comforted by the house, but also the dynamic that brings the house to life to make it into a home. There are two aspects to that we want to think about here. One is the management system that I can define that will support the development of building capabilities to do the work, to fulfill the purpose. Also, the behaviors, the soft skills that are required of leaders and everyone for us to be able to work effectively in this management system to build the capability to do the work to fulfill the purpose. So we need to define those soft skills, those behaviors. For example, how might I respond as a leader when one of my employees, one of my team members, has a problem or has made a mistake? Do I get angry? Do I throw things? Or do I seek to understand the reason why so I can take away the barriers that are in the way of that employee being successful? The management system, then, is something I can define just as I define a mechanical device. Let's say, for example, we'll meet every morning in a huddle at 8 o'clock. We'll meet again before lunch to see how the day has gone so far. We'll have weekly meetings to really assess and determine our plans for the week. We'll meet monthly to see how we're doing against our annual plan, and annually we'll develop a plan that will take our organization further towards achieving our defined purpose. This then is something that can be defined mechanically, the management system, and then the behaviors, the leader behaviors and the teamwork behaviors of everyone are those soft skills that fit in and bring this overall system to life. And one more dimension to our enterprise transformation model, and that is underneath all of this, there's a basic thinking, a mindset or underlying assumptions that inform everything we do, that inform all of our activities as we attempt to achieve our purpose. Basic thinking, and a couple of other words that I'll use interchangeably here with basic thinking, mindset or underlying assumptions. Assumptions can be of two types really, explicit assumptions that we articulate and hidden underlying assumptions that we're not aware of on a moment-to-moment basis. These are the underlying assumptions that comprise our culture, our current culture as it exists today, and our ideal culture that we aspire to. Understanding that will give us a gap to close, just as we will be able to identify gaps in other parts of our enterprise performance as we solve problems day to day. So altogether, these are things that need to be addressed, and around each of these I can ask some simple questions. What problem are we trying to solve? What purpose are we trying to achieve? What is the work to be done? How will I go about improving it? What capabilities are required and how will I grow them? What management system can I define? And what behaviors are required to build the capabilities, to do the work, to solve the problem that we're here to solve? And underneath it all is the matter of addressing what is our basic thinking. What do we currently think, for example, about cause and effect? How is that thinking currently comprised in our culture, and how does that affect the kind of culture that we want to create? These dimensions addressed lead us toward effective enterprise transformation. If we leave any of these out, we'll fail. So the lean transformation model is a situational approach because there is no perfect 10-step program to the perfect lean transformation. Each situation is unique and demands its own unique set of countermeasures. With the questions on the 5 dimensions, however, we can each map out our own transformation, one that solves our specific situational problems to achieve our own unique purpose. Good luck on your own journey.
So just to kind of summarize what John Shook just presented in that animated version, there's basically 5 dimensions that we think of from a holistic standpoint. We want to always be thinking about what is the vision and the mission and the values associated with your organization or whatever the situation is, the department, the organization. We want to look at the processes that encompass it. We want to think about how do we develop and engage all the people. And we want to create those management systems at multiple levels. It's not just one management system. It can be referred to as an operating system perhaps, but for the most part, a management system I'll describe in a little bit more detail because that terminology is very vague and can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So I'll just take a minute to explain that and then we'll get into some Q&A. And then of course the mindset portion. So what is meant by a lean management system? So if we look at the diagram over to the right, in essence, if we had a process, let's say we have a process, let's say we have some standard work or some steps that we need to follow in order to follow this process. And we know if we do these steps the way that it's described every day, we're going to get a certain result. What a lean management system is looking at, okay, we expect that if you're doing, let's say you're doing permits for people trying to get their house, their COs, and it normally takes 24 hours or 48 hours from the time you receive the request for somebody to go inspect it for the inspector to actually go out there. I know that's probably unrealistic compared to the experiences that I've had, but maybe it's a little bit longer than that. But whatever that expectation is, let's just say the inspector is planning to go out and see five houses that day to determine whether or not he or she is going to be able to give that CO. At the end of the day, so that's what's expected. That's what we think we're going to set out to be able to do. At the end of the day, if I was only able to get to 1, or if that person was only able to get to 1, I want to be able to step back and think, why? What happened? What happened where I wasn't able to get to the other 4? And so immediately, if that's really important and that's going to have a ripple effect for those other 4 people that were not able to get the inspector there. So in Lean, we would look to identify, how do I signal to a team leader or to somebody else to be able to come over and help me to get the 5 that need to be done in a timely manner. And so if that team leader or that person that I'm signaling for, that leader that I'm signaling for, is not able to help me to resolve it, then we do what's called an and-on. We'll pull the and-on and we'll stop production. We will stop production until we all come together and figure out, or the right people come together to figure out what needs to be done in order to get these 5 done before we continue going on and scheduling more. And then we learn from it. We reflect on that and we say, okay, here's what happened, here's why it happened. Let's try these, what we call countermeasures, to see how we can correct that so it doesn't happen again. And we'll try them and say, okay, does this solve the problem, yes or no? And if it does, great. If not, then we'll keep trying. And so that's that cycle that keeps on going around. So the words over here to the left, I think, help to substantiate what's meant when I think about a lean management system. So it's that vision and mission. So everything that we're always doing, we're always looking at that vision and mission. It's the standard work for our processes that tell us how we do our job or in order to accomplish that vision or mission. The visual management is important because if we can't see, if as leaders that we're trying to coach and mentor and develop employees, if we can't see what's working or not working, we don't know what we don't know. So we can't necessarily help them and develop them to be problem solvers. So we want to visualize this, and sometimes with business processes, that's probably one of the harder, more difficult areas because everything is inside a computer. A lot of what we do as business process people is multifaceted, so we want to bring that to life with visual management. Leader standard work is about how the leaders need to behave, not just the workers. So the workers have the actual standard work, but then the leaders have their own standard work of, okay, if so-and-so has this signal, this is how I'm going to respond to that. And it's not going to be blame, it's going to be asking. And then I also threw in here reporting results. So as you start to do this transformation within your organization, you'll be monitoring and managing things within your own world, but then at some point, it's helpful to start seeing and benchmarking with one another. So there might be an opportunity to start rolling that up. And so at that next level up, there could also be a management system put in place so that those leaders now know what to look at and look for. And if something is doing well or not doing well, how do you recognize somebody, or how do you go find out where the barriers are to remove those? So that is what I have, and thank you very much. And I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff.
Thank you, Darlene.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get to the point where we can leverage some of the great knowledge that's up here on this panel. Let's begin with a few questions on the lean transformations that you have going on in your jurisdictions. And I'd like to just begin by going down, Allison, maybe start with you. Yours is a newer lean transformation in the state of Connecticut, and I'm very interested to learn about how you got started. So I think in prior discussions I'd heard a little bit about each one of your state efforts. How did you get started?
Hello.
Go for it.
Our state started our lean journey a few years ago with, thank you, passing a piece of legislation that specifically required lean by name, within several state agencies across areas, operational areas such as permitting and enforcement. The purpose of the legislation at the time was to improve, I guess creating jobs really is the way to say that. And so it specifically dealt with agencies where that was a goal of that agency. So in our state, they're referred to as economic development, transportation, administrative services, et cetera. So that's how it started, and from there, it sort of evolved into what it is now, which is an effort that's centrally managed within our sort of budget office in the state. And we ensure compliance with that piece of legislation, which is an important component of the effort, but we've also expanded our focus to include all operational areas because, of course, we're interested in creating jobs, but there's more to state government than that.
Allison, did you mention how long your state has been doing lean?
We've been doing some form of lean for about a decade, but the legislation that required a centralized effort was in 2011, and I've been in this position for 2 years.
Okay, very good, thank you. Holly, how about that enormous transformation that you guys have going on in Washington? When did this begin, and how did it begin for you?
Thanks for that. So the state of Washington's been on an improvement journey since really the 80s in quality circles and Malcolm Baldrige, and focused on improvement in a lot of areas. Where we got significant momentum in actually applying lean thinking was towards the end of 2011. We had a governor who was retiring. She knew she had about 18 months left on her own choice, and Therefore, she could take some risks and experiment with some things that may not have happened otherwise. And so she had influential leaders around her in our state who work for organizations like Boeing, who have been doing this kind of thinking for a while, that convinced her this could work in government. And so she said, great, let's try it. She didn't call it an experiment. Usually you don't hear politicians say, let's do an experiment, but that's really what it was. And so her whole goal was to get some momentum and get some traction. And so she charged some leaders in our organization with doing just that. Gave no money, by the way, but do that. And so they did. They got some help from Boeing, asked from all the agencies, boards and commissions, to send us 2 practitioners that we could train up. And then their job was to do one project over the course of that year and report it to us, and we would write a statewide report. And that worked out. We had 72 practitioners that received free training from Boeing, so that was a great way to get started. But it was not the place to stop. So as that governor transitioned out and our new governor came into role, he started Results Washington, which is part of his office. Is where I work, and we've had significant acceleration and momentum since then. So we have a huge annual conference. We have the Lean Fellowship Program. We have private sector partnerships in the numbers of around 200 that donate to us either advice, training, tours, or coaching. We also have 50-some Lean advisors that are stationed around the state in different agencies, boards, and commissions. So they've been appointed by their director to be responsible in some way for Lean in that organization. Those aren't necessarily full-time folks. Those are people who work full-time, and some of them do Lean as part of their job, and others are fully dedicated to applying Lean thinking in their organization. So that's kind of our journey.
Good. And I think I mentioned before, you just had a conference in the state of Washington.
We did, yeah. This is our 4th annual conference, and we have about close to 3,000 people that register. It's a free conference, so it's not something state employees often get to do, is attend a conference, 2-day conference especially. And so they have to bring a can of food. That's their only payment plan. Wow. So we donated about 360 meals through collecting food, and about just over 2,000 people end up showing up. Something about having a free conference means people sign up and don't show up, but and we plan for that so that we don't max out our capacity. But yeah, just over 2,000 people were there.
Okay, very good. Henry, how about you in Colorado?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for attending our section. There's a lot of competition for content at this conference, so appreciate your attendance. Colorado, we had an interesting start to this thing. We had leftover federal stimulus money from the recession, the ARA money that the states got to use. The outgoing governor in 2010 left $5 million unspent, and then the new governor came in, and his mantra was actually the 3 E's that Jeff mentioned: efficient, effective, elegant. He wanted to kind of inspire state employees and state agencies to do a better job for customers. He came out of the restaurant business, and so customer service is how this whole thing wheels off. And so this idea, now I had been in a couple other situations where we had an efficiency project, and there's nothing more cliched than the new governor and the efficiency project, right? Everybody's seen it. It's like clockwork, and you know, you can hear the eye rolling. You don't just see it, you can hear the eye rolls. And so I asked if we could have the project in the budget office. We were talking earlier, budget and performance are so obviously connected. Also the respect, the visibility, the competency that's in the budget area, it's a natural fit. So we were successful in persuading the governor to give us half the money that was left over, and then in competition with that, we got trained by a hospital in our area that was a leader in this healthcare lean stuff. And so they had this little team inside that did lean for the whole hospital and the whole system. And as a little bit of a revenue generator, they would train people on lean. So I have to tell you, I don't know how you've been listening and if you've been skeptical or inspired or a combination. I was very much skeptical going into this thing. You know, my goodness, you know, here we go. Another management idea, flavor of the month. But at least I went in with a little bit of an open mind, and about a day and a half into it, man, I wanted to take the mountain. This is really exciting. You can start to see the connection. And so if you haven't kind of already thought about where it would work in your program, think about someone getting a license. Think about hiring someone. Think about onboarding a new employee. Think about processing a tax form. You have work where things go through a process and there's a customer at the other end. You might have a customer inside your organization and it's not anyone close to being a taxpayer. So I would encourage you to think about where is their standard work, where are there a lot of people waiting, and then the next thing is just think about what training do you need. It's not a lot of training. The Lean Toolkit is kind of almost public domain at this point. What you do need is someone insightful enough, happy enough, thoughtful enough. Our morning speaker is kind of the archetype of the person I'm talking about. Learning how to facilitate a meeting, learning how to approach this process with respect, treating the workers with respect. This is foundational stuff in Lean. There's a joke, Lean stands for less employees are needed. If you were there yesterday, you saw the video. The furniture company actually could do more. The eye clinic could do more. The pressures on government are unbelievably tremendous. The workforce is aging and people leave on a regular basis. You do not need to go into this with any kind of layoff worries. Take those off the table from the beginning. Commit to your workforce. You're not going to lay people off. There's places to land them elsewhere where you work. There's going to be departures. There's going to be retirements. And chances are they're already wanting more workers because the processes that they're in right now feels like there's a backlog. So we started with our money, then we did enough good stuff that the legislature gave us additional money to keep going, but now we're doing more around having Lean fit into our performance system. What are we trying to accomplish? What's the work to be done, from the video? So a better highway system, we have some transportation people. We want to get inspections done more quickly. We want people to get their professional licenses more quickly. So we have those processes that produce those products. Lean can help us get that done more quickly. So we have a little bit of a continuing budget, but now our capabilities are higher because we've done training. And now what we're focusing on is helping people scope projects, helping get that facilitation done, and then training senior leaders on the performance management system. So there's more in the slide deck. There's some stuff on our website. It's exciting. I would encourage you to just get started. Don't get overwhelmed. It's easy to get anxious. There's so much work to do. Just getting started is a big deal. And the point of getting started is that if you keep going, that's your there. The there is a continuous improvement culture and system.
Great, thank you, Henry. And all right, so Amy, tell us about Baltimore City.
I have to follow all those amazing stories.
Yeah, I know, right?
No, I'm just kidding. So Baltimore City has had a very interesting Lean journey. I would say it started really in 2012 when my boss, Andrew, who presented with me yesterday, attended a conference just like this one and first heard about this incredible system called Lean and how it was really changing everything. And so when I was hired in 2012, he said, you're going to do this, that we're going to build Lean together. So what we did was we did a lot of preparation ahead of time. Andrew felt very strongly that we needed a dedicated physical space in which to do Lean events and eventually Lean training. So working with the Department of Human Resources and the Mayor's Office of Information Technology, we actually built a room in one of our buildings that is now called the Innovation Lab. It has wall-to-wall whiteboards. It has a little kitchenette with snacks, a coffee machine, a fridge, a microwave. It has a smart whiteboard where you can just use it electronically. It has a Lean library and has a great view of Baltimore Street. It's not that great, but it does have a full window on one side of the room. So this is where all of our Lean events occur. This is where our training occurs. So we did that, and then we decided to pitch Lean to all of the agency heads, all of the mayor's cabinet. I've heard a lot about Lean does not mean, and the negative connotations that go with that. Part of this pitch was to ensure all of our agency heads that we were not looking to lay people off or to fire anyone or cut positions of any sort. We did not hide the fact that jobs may change and responsibilities and how things were done might change because that is the essence of Lean, but we were not interested in cutting jobs, laying people off, firing, nothing of the sort. We gave the same presentation presentation to the union heads because they were a little nervous from what I heard from Andrew. So we gave them the presentation. And during these presentations, just basic information sessions, we asked for them to suggest lean pilot programs because we have to start somewhere. At that point, I should also mention, at that point, we had also chosen a private company to run our lean events. So we had already chosen our facilitator. We felt very confident that they would be able to lead us through this pilot experience. We got 10 pilot proposals. We did 3 of them. But we have also made our way systematically through the other 7 that we got. So every proposal that we got, we have either gotten to already or we are still in the process of getting to. Some of those proposals have actually become internal lean projects for some of our students who have gone through the training. So we don't even have to do those because our students who went through the training have taken ownership of them themselves. So to date, we have done 8 lean events. We're getting ready for our 9th one in December. It's a big one. It's the civil servant hiring process.
Wow.
Yeah, we're scared. No, I'm just kidding. We're not scared. We're very happy to do it. I would suggest, I've heard up here from some of the panelists, all great advice. I would suggest starting with some low-hanging fruit, maybe something like a licensing process or some kind of process where customers interact with the jurisdiction daily. Something that you know is not performing well, but something that if you just address can yield high gains. So that is where I would suggest you go. Also, I think training is very important. In Baltimore, we have built a 3-tiered training program, beginner training, intermediate training, and advanced training. And our advanced training ends with the goal of actually training people to become certified lean facilitators within the city. So we will have our own unit of lean facilitators. But those are my suggestions. I'm very excited that you all are either doing lean or are interested in doing lean. And that's my advice.
All right, very good. Thank you, Amy. I'm curious about something that was mentioned a couple of times here about improvement activities, improvement events. And my question, I think, goes to this. In the public sector, just as in private, you can see some initial good starts, and then things kind of plateau. Folks kind of get into a bit of a rut, and oftentimes that rut can be named. It's Kaizen events, these improvement activities, projects that we do. So I wonder, have you encountered some kind of a tendency towards that type of a focus? You know, how many projects are we doing? It's almost like a Vietnam War thing, you know, measuring it by body count. A lot of executives want to say, how many Kaizen events did we do? There seems to be a focus there. Have you encountered that type of a thing? And how do you avoid that and get to actually building culture and building capabilities of people and building leaders? Henry, would you field that one first?
Okay. Thank you for the question. I think too many Kaizen events right now would be a luxury item. But I will say that the thing about the Kaizen events is that they're fun. They can be inspiring, especially if you do the pre-work. You know, you get everyone on the same page and people are calmed down. But I think the follow-through and getting people to actually commit to the changing of the work, this is the actual accomplishment. The Kaizen event is an interesting thing because you've maybe had a nice bonding experience, teamwork, etc. But the commitment to the change, I think that's where we're struggling and we want to do better. You said the word building up capabilities. This is probably the thing I'm most passionate about. I think this lean stuff is wonderful, but this leadership training and building up the capabilities of our leaders to do the system that the outside world says they want. They want a performance management system. We want a better government. We want to see more value. We want you to act like business people more often. But we don't have any structural training for that stuff. So that's been the companion piece to our program. Friday is the kickoff of the 3rd class for senior leaders in our government to come to our Performance Academy that we created at the budget office. We started with 45. Last year was 85. We have another 85 starting tomorrow. And they're learning about lean, they're learning about culture, they're learning about change management, they're learning about performance metrics, strategic planning, and the system that we've required them to do. So, Jeff, in your question, this capabilities issue is a profound one, and it's just like everything else. You get started, you keep going, and you try and do more.
Okay, good. Any other responses to that question?
Yeah, I think this is a common pitfall, actually, and I think it's a killer of transforming or changing this kind of thinking. So what ends up happening is we become somewhat dependent on experts to come in and solve our problems. So when we're only doing event-based lean, then we don't have, one, responsibility at all levels of the organizations to improve our work, and two, we wait for a superhero of some sort that's smarter than us to come in and fix our problems. And so I think that there's a great way to kind of get folks exposed and get momentum by starting with projects, but if that's where it ends, that's where it will also die. So we've done quite a few things to get all staff or all employees, whatever you call them, at your organization to get exposure to lean thinking in the form of simple problem solving, so that it's not waiting for a value stream mapping event or a Kaizen event, but rather changing their thinking about how to solve problems in their work, and also providing coaching training for leadership. So I think it was interesting that Mark said if you make a technical change, you also have to make a managerial or leadership change, and that's the two things for me that go together. If you create a bunch of problem solvers and then you don't have an infrastructure to, one, make space for the problem solving, and two, support it in a way that makes people successful, then it's a waste. So don't create a bunch of problem solvers, please, and then leave your leaders in a place where they don't know how to enable or allow for those problem solving efforts to happen, or you'll have a bunch of frustrated employees. So that's kind of how we've addressed it, and it certainly was a pitfall we were headed for. And we still count projects as an aggregate, as an organization. We still count training, and we do some tally work that I don't personally think has a lot of value, but it shows engagement on our journey, it shows some progress, but we have all that information roll up to how are we getting better quality, how are we getting better safety, how are we getting employees more engaged, how are we delivering better service. So all that tally work rolls up to actual value for customers. So that's what I would say. But we by no means have it perfect, but we have taken a yield away from the pitfall of focusing just in project land.
Very good. Thank you. Allison, Amy, if you have something to add, please.
So I agree with Henry that too many Kaizen events would be a luxury at this point. But that being said, I think lean is multifaceted, and it should not just focus on events. It's a great starting point, and it's a great thing to do throughout your lean program. But really critical is training, because training is where ideas and philosophies behind lean are really, really imparted. We provide training, like I said, we have the 3-level training program within our city, but we also provide training for employees before the events, so that they know what they're coming into. But right before the events, they have to do the 4-hour beginner training. It's mandatory to participate. I think we're going to be looking at deploying more lean generals, so to speak, in each of the agencies, so that we can start having people within the agencies identify processes internally, so that they can start taking ownership of these, the things that they see and that they know within their agencies internally. They can start doing them. Part of our intermediate training course, we have them do a project, kind of like a mini lean evaluation of a process within their office that they can control and that they can improve. So that would be my advice in terms of avoiding the pitfalls of just event-centric lean. It has to be deployed in a way that it infiltrates and impacts people every day, so that they're just literally thinking of this every day without even knowing it, so to speak. So that's how we're working to avoid that.
Great, Amy. Thank you. Allison?
Thanks. So we definitely fell into this trap as well, not immune to it at all. So our initial efforts with our statewide activity resulted in one of our leading agencies, and I won't mention which one, even though they're not here to defend themselves, but it's just not fair, where they were just doing event after event after event and not reporting on any of their success, because there really wasn't any to report on. They weren't spending enough time implementing their plan of action, their changes, because they were spending all of their time on events. So that's, we encourage them to get started, right? Just get started. But that sort of snowballed into a series of just 5-day Kaizen. It wasn't even, just do it every day. It was just these long events. So when I came into this position, that was sort of where they were at. And so we used the sort of and-on approach where we just said, okay, stop. We're not going to authorize any more of this activity, which is one of those benefits, right, of having your sort of organized statewide or citywide effort in either your budget or your governor's office, because you do have the ability to say, okay, we're going to stop now. We're going to reflect. We're going to figure out where the problems are. So you're going to have to go back and address the fact that you're not reporting on any of this activity. And so we've used, which I shared with a colleague yesterday, and I'll share with all of you now, we use sort of this sugar-coated stick approach, which is neither stick nor carrot, but it's to say, okay, you're going to report centrally, which is similar to what other states have done. You're going to report centrally on your achievements, and then we're going to report that to the governor, and you're going to show off what you've done. And if you have nothing to show, it's going to be slightly embarrassing because the rest of the state is showing off their accomplishments. And it did work. And so we tried to, be friendly about it, but at the same time, this is what you have to do. This is something that's very important to all of us. And you're using taxpayer money to do these improvement activities. So show the value, right? We always want to do that. What are we buying? And the other thing I would say is take these principles that we're learning in terms of continuous improvement, everybody every day, and apply it to yourself. That was definitely a trap that I fell into that I didn't even realize I was doing. I just started doing the work, planning this statewide, effort, and I wasn't ever stopping to think, okay, are we falling into any traps? Should we try something else? Can I experiment with a different way of rolling this out? And so I started doing that about a year ago and just trying different tactics because what I was doing was resulting in this sort of event-centric initiative, and that wasn't sufficient. So we pulled back on that. We tried some different things, and it's working a little bit better now. But I think measuring your own success in terms of rolling this out is really important, and keeping yourself honest and being accountable to yourself, as well as requiring others to be accountable to you and to themselves.
Allison, and that's a good point too. I find myself reminding people of this all the time. It's not just looking at your processes and looking to improve them. Lean transformation is itself a process. And so you can kind of meta-apply lean to that. It's like, where should we be ideally right now? Where are we actually? Where is that gap? Why does it exist? And how can we close the gap in our lean transformation? Darlene, at Lean Enterprise Institute, I know that you have a lot of experience with this type of thing, and I'm sure you advise people on this all the time, don't you?
Yeah, it's very interesting, especially with business processes, because as a business process, it's not like you're producing a widget. So in operations, it's very easy to see what you're producing and to see where the waste is. But with a business process, you not only have customers, internal and external, that you have a product or service that could be improved, but you have your own internal to your department processes that you're working with that also need to be improved. So it's right along with what you're just saying. Very good.
Well, while we've got this microphone in front of you, I just wanted to ask you, from your perspective, from the Lean Enterprise perspective, Lean Enterprise Institute perspective, nationally, I'm very curious about what you're seeing. Maybe we've been speaking about this at a statewide level, at a citywide level. What kinds of things are you seeing federally?
Great question. So certainly there's some amazing activities happening in a lot of pockets throughout the U.S. And then from a federal standpoint, there's a lot of networks that are starting to happen. So one of them, for example, is the Federal Improvement Team that's right here in Washington. There's also a lot of other networks that are happening in New England. There's a lot of different agencies. So you have the EPA, you have CMS that's really starting to take a hold of this. You have the VA. I've seen a lot of different things and have talked with a lot of different VA people, and it sounds like there might be a few different things happening in the VA, so I'm looking to get a little bit more understanding on that. But they definitely just announced not too long ago this entire program that they want to lay out, where they've created the infrastructure so that there will be people at all the different locations really helping with the continuous improvement effort. So there's a lot of really great federal stuff that's starting to take hold.
That's very encouraging. Thank you. A couple of questions from the audience, and I wanted to maybe come back for a moment and just touch upon this topic of improvement and improvement events. And the question was one of incentives to actually participate in lean improvement activities. Maybe Amy, starting from you and working our way down this way. Do you have incentives?
We do.
You do?
Yes, so there's one big incentive that we tell people about before the lean event. So a lot of these improvements, what we have found is that a lot of these solutions or improvements that people come up with in the event cost money to implement. So if we only had, and then we're not talking huge sums of money, we're talking if we only had this programming done for $5,000, or if we only had this software for $200, that would improve. We had 3 pilots, and then we had a 4th event for the fire permit inspection process. And MOIT, the Mayor's Office of Information Technology, was a part of that event, and they said we could really take care of a lot of this if we could reprogram this, reprogram that. It would cost about $10,000. So after talking to Andrew, we decided to make $10,000 available for the improvement. That set a precedent that following every lean event, if there was an improvement that could be done for $10,000 or less, the Innovation Fund of the City of Baltimore would give that money for that improvement. That being said, I think the essence of lean, however, is to work with what you have and to not just throw money and more resources at a problem. But in our experience, if it is $10,000 or less, we do have a pot of money available for those what we consider small level improvements that may cost a little money in terms of time or resources. We also gave money for a couple of supplies for the MOED One-Stop Center event that we did. They needed some supplies, some new signage and things to make life a little easier for their customers. It only cost about $600 is what they needed, so we gave them $600. But we always start with the premise, you don't have any more money, we don't have any more people to hire. Start from there, and we just try to operate on that basis because we don't want people thinking that lean events can become this wish list where, if I only had $2 million, I could do X, Y, and Z. That's the story of all of us, if we only had more of this or more of that. But that is an incentive that we use. I will say, though, I think the biggest incentive is just being able to talk about your performance and being able to show that you are doing excellent work with taxpayer money. And all of our agencies, all of our big agencies, report to the mayor monthly in what are called the stat sessions. So we have police stat, finance stat, fire stat. These are the things they talk about. Why is revenue down? Why am I hearing all these complaints about the permitting process? The fire stat meetings have become very interesting since we have done the fire permitting event. It's the first thing they want to talk about. Wow, all they want to talk about in fire stat, they don't want to talk about fires, they don't want to talk about retirement and attrition. They want to talk about fire permitting. So that has become their favorite thing to talk about in these meetings, a little to the point where I think the mayor might be a little tired of hearing about fire permitting. But anyways, those are the incentive. We do have a financial incentive for improvements, and the biggest incentive is just getting the chance to talk about your results because it is getting a lot of attention in our city.
Good.
So I would add to that, we have a saying that I kind of inherited when I was at Starbucks and used at the state that's reach for your brain before you reach for your wallet. And really most things that we can do aren't going to be expensive or aren't going to cost money. And most of our processes are broken, and we slap a technology or costly solution on top of a broken process, and now we have a broken process and a broken system, expensive system usually. And so that's kind of our saying, but we do know that people are motivated in different ways, and so there's a lot of intrinsic motivation. So telling your stories, I think, is really a valuable one. And because of the visibility that our state's gotten related to the work that's happening, there's plenty of opportunity for folks to get to share their stories, whether that's, we have authors writing about what's happening, so we hook them up with specific agency folks who get to tell their story and get written about in books. We have articles that are regularly being published. We have this big conference where we can showcase folks' work and get them public stage time to be able to talk about the great things that are happening. Also, the governor goes to see, so our governor gets out into the agencies and actually does Gemba walks, and so we help point him in the direction of folks we know are doing great work. And so there's certainly ways to leverage opportunities that people care about to incentivize the really great work that's happening. So that's one way we do.
Very good. Before we go on to some of the other responses to that, I just wanted to point out some of the terminology that you may be hearing for the first time in Lean may be a bit confusing. In your day books for this conference, there are a few pages of Lean 101. A dictionary is offered for you. So if maybe you haven't heard these terms before, Andon, Kaizen, Gemba, okay, they're in there for you. Any other responses to that question about incentivizing?
Oh, I think we should get through questions here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to just add a couple of things that we have also used the monetary incentive sort of way of doing things in terms of IT improvements, et cetera. But I think the recognition piece is really important, especially for public servants, because what we do pulls at people's heartstrings every day, right? A lot of us are here because of the passion for the work. And recognition in our field, and I'm sure in a lot of industries, but in our field, is pretty uncommon. And so we go through our day, serving others, and a lot of people just want somebody to say, thanks for doing that, good job. And so in Connecticut, we have this, it's not a large conference, it's very small, but I would suggest maybe you think about doing something on this scale for your first year report outs. At the Capitol, during legislative session, we have all of our state agencies who are active with Lean come and showcase what they've done. And we do like a really simple science fair type thing. It's sort of like a cocktail party without the cocktails, right? People are just milling around talking. It allows the agencies to talk to each other. It gives them exposure to the legislature. The governor comes, and it's awesome. And I think, it's a low cost, sort of low stress for me type of event that gives people just the opportunity to be recognized for what they're doing. And that it snowballs into this conversation with other state employees. Oh, did you go to the showcase? Oh, I want to get involved in a Lean event so I can tell the governor what I'm doing. So it just gives us sort of leverage. And so I would encourage you to try to find ways within your state or municipality to recognize the folks that are doing the work.
Okay, very good. Henry, anything to add to that?
Well, I think the best incentive is, getting to brag about your work. And when we started the first go-around, we didn't know how much money it would take, and the initial look was, 4 or 5 departments would participate, and then the other department heads were jealous, and they lobbied and they complained because this was a way to show the governor they were doing their work. So we reordered all the money, and we leveraged it differently, and got everyone a project, at least one project in the first go-round. And so if you do this right, you're going to have too many volunteers, and you're going to have to really prioritize the project. I don't think you even should worry about having to do an incentive.
Okay. And Henry, you just touched upon another question that I was curious about. You must see so many opportunities for improvement across your jurisdiction of government. How do you choose? How do you select? How do you down select? How do you prioritize?
So at the beginning, we let everyone pick a project except for one big project, which ended up being our signature accomplishment. There had been an audit finding with respect to how a tax form goes through our process. And some of you have already heard this story, but the state auditor found that in a performance audit that, we can't tell exactly how, but there's no way you're not wasting $3 million a year processing tax forms between 2 departments and a huge chunk of travel between Denver and a city where another process happened. The 2 departments couldn't agree on a solution. In fact, they came up with a worse process was their compromise out of the trying to get them to come together. So we had to hire basically a therapist facilitator to solve the problem. We took 30 days down to 2 days, and it'll eventually get there. We made a mistake. We automated something with a poor vendor without enough due diligence, but you could take from 30 days to 2 days. And as part of that, we committed to no layoffs. We landed the 36 employees that weren't needed anymore for the process. So The first go-round was people know what's wrong, let them fix it, except for one place where we had kind of a glaring public shaming from the auditor.
Good. And if anybody else wants to add to that, feel free.
Yeah, so we do have a statewide effort, and then we have folks with quite a bit of capability within the agencies. So we let them decide what they're going to be working on, and then they report to us, and then we will circle back in form of coaching or communication related to what they're working on to help kind of steer and guide if we find challenging things. In our office, we have this fellowship program where we have 5 leaders that come to us from other agencies, stay in our office for about 12 months and work on a statewide problem that's linked into one of the governor's 5 priority areas. Those projects we have more kind of control, if you will, or influence on selecting, and we use a criteria, helps us determine, value to Washingtonian, how ready is that work to actually be worked on, how important is it to the governor, and can you get it done in the 12 months that the person is going to be working on it. So there's some criteria we leverage to select that actual work. So there's a variety of ways we do it.
Good. Okay, very good. Anything else to add to that question? We're good? Please.
I'll be brief because I know we have more questions to get to. But I would just say that doing your due diligence and having the pre-work meetings ahead of time, 6 to 8 weeks ahead of the actual events, is very important. As I mentioned before, we had 3 pilot events. I think all 3 pilot events were successful in the sense that we provided good training, a good introduction to Lean. One of our pilot events was less successful, of the 3, was less successful in terms of implementation because the people in the event were not committed enough, attendance was shaky, the attitude, the tone, just the tone of the entire event was a little rocky from the start. There have been some improvements with that event, not as many as we would have liked, but that is part of the learning process. That is why we had pilots, and we didn't just go full throttle right away. The agencies involved in that event, it was also our first multi-agency event. In retrospect, I think our pilots could have really just focused on single agency events instead of trying to reach for the stars a little bit. And this was actually a very complicated process, as we found out. I think during our pre-work meetings, we could have seen that a little more clearly, but this was a learning experience for us. It was one of our first. So that would be, in terms of choosing which events to prioritize, assessing that from the get-go, assessing people's levels of commitment and their true understanding of what these 4 or 5 days is going to consist of. That's very important. I think in retrospect we could have seen it coming a lot sooner, that event was not set up for success just based on the approach that was taken to it.
Okay.
But yeah, so just knowing assessing that ahead of time and knowing what you're getting into ahead of time is important.
Good, Amy. So you touched on something that's actually one of the other questions here. For maybe our 3 state-level panelists, I'm curious about this question. It actually works in a couple different dimensions, so let me ask it this way. Number 1, how are you at the state level linking your lean transformation together maybe at other levels of government? That's one dimension of this. The other dimension is going horizontally, and Amy had just touched on this. How do you approach processes that cut across different functions and departments? I think you've all described improvement events that maybe focus on a particular department or process within a department. What about those things that cut across? Henry, we want to take that one first? Vertical and horizontal cross-cutting projects.
That's probably 201 or 301 of this stuff.
Yeah.
So we're working now within this performance management system mandated by the legislature, but we kind of fixed it and tailored it to make it work more sensibly. So the cross-departmental stuff, we have work groups across workforce development, health, environment, economic development, and water and energy. And so those just are the top problems right now. They've evolved over the term of the administration. So we have policy people, we have cabinet people, we have budget people working in these work groups, and then they're tackling these problems together, understanding the overlaps. And so where lean fits into all this is once we've identified these kind of shared goals like Department of Labor, economic development, education, higher education are working on the intractable problem of long-term unemployed. But there's all these different things in different departments that touch that. So once we know kind of the needle we want to move, we then identify those things that move the needle, and then from there, you have processes for all that stuff somehow. And so lean can help those processes become more efficient. You get better at moving the levers more quickly. The levers produce results out in the world more quickly. So that's the cascade that we're working on now. And that's what's fun, more collaboration. You don't have to reorganize the government. You can just become virtually reorganized by these work groups if you think about them the right way.
Very good.
So I would add, we have a very similar thing. We call them goal councils. They're made up of executive cabinet, policy folks, budget folks. We have specific measures, and we have goal maps. You can go to results.wa.gov if you want to see any of this stuff. But they agreed on the goals that are on those maps, and they work on them together. And depending on what the actual work is, they might form smaller working groups to tackle something that the whole goal council might not be working on. As far as reaching out kind of beyond the state level, everything that we do includes a local municipality of some sort, a county, a city, a board, a commission, a school district. There's very few things we do as a state that don't include that level of cross collaboration. So we're navigating new ways to manage those relationships, because often they're not very well managed. They're often pretty broken, in which case the governor's regularly creating like commissions or groups of people, coalitions, just to make people talk to each other, it feels like. So our office is uniquely positioned to be a convener of those kinds of folks and be an unbiased facilitator of making conversations happen that maybe wouldn't have before. And that's kind of a benefit of being a statewide function. So that's one way that we're making those kinds of things happen in the areas of like homelessness and clean water, big statewide initiatives. One thing that we're often saying as well is our citizens or Washingtonians don't really understand the difference between state, local. They think government is government, and so if we're not working together, then they don't trust government. So even if the city is totally royally screwing up, the state's royally screwing up. They don't know the difference and don't care, and quite honestly, I don't either, really, a lot of times. And so we need to work together so that we can continue to build that trust in our citizenship, and so it's really, really valuable.
Wow, Holly, when you said that, I saw so many knowing head nods and smiles. Can I get an amen? Yes,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's
Okay,
true.
very good. Allison, anything to add there?
Yeah. So our structure is a little bit different. We don't have currently, we're working toward it, but we don't have overarching goals that we're supporting sort of in the traditional strategic plan model. We're sort of a ground up type of thing. So our interagency work happens in a different way. So as Jeff mentioned in my introduction, I chair a 14-member steering committee, which is made up of all operational areas of government. And we as a group try to talk about different opportunities that cross our functions. And so it is limited, obviously, in its scope, because it's just 14 agencies, right? So in the executive branch, we've got more than that. However, a lot of the issues that we discuss bring up sort of those other areas of government that are not represented at the table. And it is the steering committee's sort of primary function to find those opportunities of collaboration across lines. In Connecticut, this type of work has not been done ever. So really anything that we come up with is pretty incredible for Connecticut. Simple things like in January we have a cross-agency event coming up about fueling stations. This has never been addressed ever. So something that simple is pretty groundbreaking for us. So through that effort, we're figuring out what sort of our goal councils, if you will, would look like. So it's starting at the bottom and moving up from there, which is the complete opposite of what has been described already. And so we're working with our CIO on that, because he's looking at things enterprise-wide from an IT standpoint, and we're looking at it enterprise-wide from an operational standpoint. And so we're teaming together to figure out what those areas are, those functional areas are where we can collaborate on a larger scale. And then to touch upon the other question regarding municipal government, et cetera. So Connecticut doesn't have counties, and so I really resonated with what Holly was just saying, where, you know, our taxpayers, our citizens don't know the difference, because there is, in most cases, no difference at all between state and local government, especially because we don't have counties. So everything is sort of intermingled all the time. And so we involve all stakeholders in our events, and that includes municipal government, nonprofits, private sector partners, et cetera. And so we're bringing them to the table as a stakeholder in any process that we're looking at. We also open up our awareness trainings to our nonprofit and private sector partners to come in and learn with us if they don't already have exposure to lean, which has definitely changed the dynamic between the industries in a lot of ways. Because we use those awareness sessions not only just to introduce people to the concepts, but also to allow for some networking that may not have organically occurred otherwise. So that's been pretty successful for us. Also, Connecticut has a Conference of Municipalities, which is sort of an organization that brings all the municipalities in Connecticut. There are 169 of them in a state that is this big on the map. Brings them all together to talk about different issues that they've encountered. And we talk with them at those conferences about what we're doing at the state level. So all these things, we try to involve each other in what we're doing.
Okay, very good. We've only got a few minutes left. I'd like to kind of end with this question, and Darlene, I'd like you to jump in here as well. I'd like you to think for a moment about the whole bell curve of adoption when it comes to lean transformation. You think about different departments in each one of your jurisdictions. I'm sure you've got some pioneers out there who jump forward and say, yes, yes, I want to do that. There's a vast middle body that needs a little bit of persuading, and then there's those hardcore at the other end. We're already lean, or they dig in their heels with some other response that may sound similar to that. If you would, give me your best sales pitch. What's the value statement? What's the case for doing lean in your department or agency? Henry, take that one first, would you?
Well, the case for doing lean is that you don't have enough resources to produce the value that your customers want. And this is an intractable issue for the United States. The aging population and the impact on our housing needs, our spending patterns, and our health systems. We are just at the front end of this. Every day someone turns 10,000 people turn 65 in our country. And that's not even the problem. You're still too young to be the drummer for the Rolling Stones at that age. It's when that cohort starts to turn 80 and resources are depleted and long-term disabilities or ability to live independently goes away. That's what's driving just about everything going on in our country right now. And so the reason you need lean is no one's going to give you another dollar to do what you need to do for your citizens. And so you get a twofer. You get a better culture, you get better value. People think of you more highly when they see you driving by. So it's just, I view it as almost an imperative at this point because of the financial and structural pressures facing state and local government.
Holly, best sales pitch, go.
So my best sales pitch is who doesn't want to feed more babies? So that's usually what I say about the work we do has real meaning. It has a real value. It actually touches real lives. And if we can do more of it with what we have today, you're feeding more babies. I mean, it's just hard to argue with. And in the meantime, we're really needing to make where we work the best place to work so we can continue to attract fantastic talent, retain fantastic talent, and lean is a way to keep people engaged and excited about being there and get people there. So that's the twofer that I like to talk about is the feeding more babies and making this a great place to work.
Very good. Allison, 30 seconds. Give me your best shot.
Yeah, sure. So lean gives people a voice. It gives your employees a voice. Most people in every industry are not comfortable, don't feel empowered to suggest alternatives to the way things are done. And this enables them to feel comfortable and supported in doing so.
Very good. Amy? Convince me.
So the title, we have a newsletter in the city of Baltimore, and the title of it is called Leaning Forward. That's my pitch. Lean forward. Also in my office, when anybody new gets hired, Andrew gives them a copy of this book called The Price of Government. I suggest everybody read it if they haven't. The first chapter of that book is very dramatic. It basically says, you are in an age of permanent fiscal crisis. There will never be enough money for anything ever again. It's a little dramatic for my taste, but I like the message. So this is a tool in the toolbox of making things better, doing more for less. So lean forward with us, come with us. And also that slide that Jeff showed at the beginning where it had the American flag and every citizen should expect efficiency and an effective government. One of the things that I've said to people, and this might be a little overly emotional, but we have a moral obligation as public servants to be just that, to serve the public and to do that in the best way possible. This is one of the ways we can do that in the best way possible. It is not really an option to not perform at optimum for the citizens who pay us and put their faith and trust in us every day to do the best job we can. So go lean, go America.
Awesome.
That's all part of my pitch.
Very good. And Darlene, I'm sure you do this all the time.
Actually, I love what everybody just said, and I'm ready.
Yeah.
No, I think really we can't afford not to. We have a finite amount of resources. You know, we all are hardworking Americans. We pay a lot of taxes. Those taxes have to help go back into our community, so we can do more with less by applying lean.
Well said. Thank you very much. Okay. And that's about it. We're all out of time. I wanted to thank all of you for participating in this forum. And a round of applause, please, for our panelists. Thank you very much for coming here to Maryland and sharing your experience, your wisdom with us. We're looking forward to expanding our lean transformation in all of our different departments and agencies, moving towards statewide. And thank you so much for giving us your advice and your experience. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And for all of you, enjoy the rest of the conference. We have some excellent presentations this afternoon. The lunch keynote I'm sure you're going to enjoy. And if you're interested in perhaps using this forum, what we've just experienced together for the last two hours or so, as maybe a vehicle for communicating to some of your folks back home, we're going to work as quickly as we can to make that video available to you at no cost and to help you share this information with others. Thanks again. We hope you have a great conference.